So I use this exercise as an alternative to doing overhead presses, because if I'm doing, let's say I'm doing squats and deadlifts, I find that those really work your lower back. And if you want to do overhead pressing, sometimes you're really arching your back when you're pushing the weight over your head, and you end up with a sore back. So doing these handstand push-ups, you can really load your shoulders up in comparison to doing overhead press. Like overhead pressing, I might only do like 140 pounds and do 5 reps, but if I'm doing deficit handstand push-ups with these handles, I can do, or the best I've done is 10 reps at 190 pound body weight. So that really makes a difference in terms of how much you're loading your shoulders in comparison to doing military press. That's why I made these, and yeah, so I don't do any overhead pressing anymore. And in my workout routine, I have a day where I focus more on calisthenic type exercises that don't load up my lower back. So I have one workout where I don't load my lower back and I do single leg squats, I do handstand push-ups, I do these special pull-ups, and yeah, so on my other day I do squats and deadlifts and weighted dips. Alright, so for this project you're going to need a saw. So I'm going to be using this circular saw, and I'll show you guys how you can make precise square cuts with a circular saw. I was originally going to use a miter saw, but since this is a do-it-yourself project, I just want to use tools that most people will have around their house. So you're going to need a speed square, you're going to need a drill. You only need one drill, but I'm going to use 2. You're going to need a bit for driving your screws, so got a number 2 square bit for these screws. You're going to need a drill bit for pilot holes, so this is a 7/64, and so that's a little bit narrower than the screw. I'd recommend using wood glue. You don't need it, but it will help make it more sturdy, so I'd recommend using wood glue. And then for the screws, I have these are number 8 2.5 inch deck screws. You can use any wood screws that are number 8 and 2.5 inch. And then you're going to need 2x4s, 8 foot length, so 2 of them. You're going to want to get relatively straight boards. This one's a bit bowed, but that'll be fine. I'm going to be using some scrap pieces that I have lying around. Okay, so here's your cut list right here. You're going to cut 4 pieces at 12 inches, 4 pieces at 11 inches, 4 pieces at 2.5 inches, and 8 pieces at 9.5 inches. If you're only buying 2 8-foot lengths of 2x4, then to make this work, cut your 4 12-inch pieces on your first board and cut your 4 11-inch pieces on your first board. Then the rest of the cuts you can make on your second board. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to get precise square cuts with a circular saw. So what you're going to want to do is, so I'm cutting on the right side, so my good piece is going to be on the right side of the board, and I'm going to have my speed square on the left and my circular saw on the right. So what I'm going to want to do is measure the distance between my blade and this edge here, and then when I measure, so I'm going to make a 12-inch cut, so when I measure that, I'm going to add the distance between the blade and this edge of this table. So I'll show you that. So it's 1.25 inches when it's hooked onto the blade. Since our good piece is on the right side of the blade, then we're going to include the blade, so we're going to hook it onto the blade when we measure to this edge, so which is 1.25 inches. If we were cutting with the good side on the left of the blade, then we would measure butting up to the blade to this table, which is 1 3/16 inches. So good side on the right is going to be 1.25 inches. So my board, I want to cut 12 inches. So I'm going to add 1.25 inches to that, 13.25. And that's going to be where I'm going to line up my speed square on that mark. And I'll make my cut, butting up the circular saw against the speed square, making sure that I'm pushing it all the way to the wood and it's square. And we'll measure our board. And we have exactly 12 inches. Okay, so once you're done with cutting all your pieces, you just want to give quick sanding on the edges so that you don't have any rough edges. Nothing too crazy. This is 120 grit sandpaper. Okay, so your 11-inch pieces, those are your bottoms. So what you want to do with these pieces is you want to make sure that they're sitting on the flatter side. So just try to rock it back and forth. So this one on flat ground. So this one's pretty sturdy, but you want to try and test both sides and see which side sits flatter. So put it on flat ground. So there's a little wobble there. So this side seems good. So I'll just call this the top. And you just want to test out all your 11-inch pieces to make sure that they are on the flatter side. So this one wobbles a bit, less wobble this way, so this will be the top. So this one, make sure there's nothing underneath it. So this is pretty sturdy. That wobbles a bit that way, sturdy that way, so this will be the top. And yeah, this is the base, so top, I just mean this side faces up, and that way it doesn't wiggle. So now the next step is you're going to mark out your base. So it's going to have 3 2x4s wide on top. How we're going to mark it out is, so it's 11 inches wide. So you're going to find your half of that, which is 5.5. On the top, and 3 2x4s wide. So 2x4 is 1.5 inches wide, so 3 of them is 4.5 inches. From your center mark, 4.5, so 2.25 out from your center mark. So 1 2.25 and 1 2.25, and that's how it lays out. You can double check from the outside. So from the outside it ends up being 3.25 to that mark and 3.25 to that mark, so that's good. And we'll just draw that line in. And that's where your wood's gonna sit. So we'll just mark out all of these now. So 3 1/4 from the outside. 3 1/4 from the outside. And we'll make our square line. Mark out all our pieces. 3 1/4. 3 1/4.